Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Editor's Note. And in today's edition, we'll try and focus on the latest with specific focus, of course, on the Islamic Republic of Iran as the standoff between the United States and the Ayatollah regime in Tehran is ongoing. Diplomacy is taking place, and we are expecting a second round of talks tomorrow in Geneva between the United States envoys, namely Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff on the American side, and then on the Iranian side, you have the Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi. They're expected not to meet directly, indirectly, but nonetheless, there are reports of some type of progress, albeit very nominal. Nonetheless, they are trying to sell it on both sides as significant. And at the same time, we're also seeing the various ripple effects of the latest developments on that front taking effect not only in countries that have direct ties with the Islamic Republic, namely Iraq, Lebanon, the Houthi-controlled areas of Yemen and other locations in the region, but also specifically in the Gaza Strip, where we are expected also to have the Board of Peace that President Trump has erected recently meet for the first time in the United States. We will discuss that at length, but first let's introduce our guest for today, Brigadier General in Reserve, Yossi Kuperwasser, formerly the Director General of Israel's Ministry of Strategic Affairs, the head of the IDF Intelligence Directorate's Research and Assessment Division, currently the president of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security. It's good to have you with us, General.
My pleasure.
Now, I'd like to start with the Board of Peace. We will discuss that briefly because tomorrow we will hold a more extensive discussion also as part of our Jerusalem studio. What are we to take out of that? Is there meat to this type of infrastructure that was erected by the Americans?
Well, I think basically this meeting of the Board of Peace on Thursday is supposed to be a symbolic event to make sure that everybody realizes that Trump means business. He really means to bring about peaceful future to Gaza, and prosperous future for Gaza. And that would also go along with security for Israel. That's what he's trying to accomplish, and he's ready to put his money and the money of others on the table in order to make this happen. Everybody knows that this is not going to succeed if Hamas is not going to be disarmed. So the burden is on all those who promised to disarm Hamas to make it happen. First and foremost on the Americans, who said that this is a precondition for moving forward with the reconstruction of Gaza. Secondly, on the Turks and the Qataris, who gave the Americans the promise, together with Hamas to some extent, that Hamas is going to be disarmed, and they have to come good under promise. And finally, on Israel, if all of the above fails, and probably it will fail, if all this fails, then Israel is going to be the one everybody's going to look at and say, okay, go disarm Hamas. And Israel is ready to do that. We are not in a hurry to doing that, and we can wait and give everybody the chance to convince Hamas to disarm. But if they fail at the time of our liking, we shall do what needs to be done. And we have to remember that the task is immense. It's a very difficult challenge ahead of us, and have all the Board of Peace. But we want the Board of Peace to succeed. Just like Trump, we want the Board of Peace to succeed. Because if it succeeds, it is going to have a great impact on not only our relations with the Palestinians in Gaza, but also on the world order. It's a proof that there is an alternative to the UN as a tool to decide how the world is going to function. And this is something very important for Israel too, because we are suffering in the UN. And that's why I think we want Trump to succeed. And that's why we cooperate with all the bodies that were built by the Board of Peace structure. The Executive Committee of the Board of Peace was Nikolai Maladanov as head, with the CMCC, the Civil Military Coordination Center in Kiryat Gat. We cooperate very intensively with them in making sure that more than enough, much more than enough, humanitarian aid flows into Gaza. And we are even ready to cooperate with the technocratic government that was established and sits in Cairo. We are ready to make sure that the plan succeeds. We expect that the success of the plan will also mean de-radicalization of Gaza, because in the end of the day, we are going to remain living next to Gaza. And if we want to see change,
But that's going to take time.
This is going to take a long time, but we have to see that it starts.
Right. Well, I'm not sure that a failure of the Board of Peace means necessarily that there is no alternative to the UN. It's just not necessarily in this format.
But if it succeeds,
it will highlight the necessity for the United Nations
if it succeeds with such a difficult challenge like Gaza that nobody wanted to deal with, that Israel's policy for ages was let's leave it like that and don't touch it. We are ready even to let the money from Qatar come in, and just in order not to be caught in a position where we have to do something about Gaza and take it over. This was our policy for ages. And now, if the Board of Peace is going to succeed in dealing with this kind of a challenge, this is going to be very meaningful for many other conflicts.
Well, let's broaden the discussion, since the Board of Peace is not necessarily only about the Gaza Strip. There are aspirations which are somewhat ambiguous in the statements made by President Trump and his cabinet, but nonetheless, they do at times highlight that it's not necessarily about Hamas, it's not about the Palestinians or Gaza. This is much larger than this, and one of the aspects is obviously the broadening of the circle of peace in the Middle East, to infuse it with prosperity and with the hopes for somewhat pacifying this region, for the necessity of ratcheting up the circle of peace between Israel and the Saudis, between Israel and other countries in the region. Are you optimistic?
It's very difficult to be optimistic at this point, because it's an extremely difficult challenge to make the move into the second phase.
Right.
And it's going to take a long time. But if we manage to break through there, then the peace plan of President Trump offers a path that may lead to broadening of the Abraham Accords. Israel was ready to accept that success there is going to pave the road or build the path forward to Palestinian self-determination that may take the shape of a state. And this was inserted into the language of the plan in order to make it possible for Saudi Arabia to join in and move towards peace and move towards establishing normal relations with Israel. These were the Saudi demands. In spite of that, we don't move forward in this direction so far because of all kinds of considerations of Saudi Arabia that have nothing to do with whether we are ready to move forward on the Palestinian track or not. So we shall have to wait and see.
To the point where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has already mentioned the Saudis in the context of their military relations with the Turks and their deepening relations with the Qataris. It seems like they're altering course from Riyadh's perspective. What is that about?
I think this is tactical, but reflects the worries of Saudi Arabia of what's going to happen in the Middle East if Iran gets really weakened. Then the entire structure of power sharing and power balance between the different players in the Middle East is going to change. And they needed Israel and the United States first and foremost in order to counter the Iranian threat. Now that Iran has become weakened and maybe even going to be attacked again by the United States in a way that is going to weaken Iran even further, they need less the Israeli input, and they are more interested in building a Sunni axis with Turkey, as long as Turkey is ready to be less identified with the Muslim Brotherhood and with threats to Saudi Arabia. So Saudis always want to be friends with people that are threatening them. It's,
interesting. Okay.
That's a safety net for them.
But it does seem that there was a scale back from the Turkish part on when it comes to the Muslim Brotherhood. It's not the case with Qatar, and the Qataris are even not necessarily only exclusively sympathetic towards the Muslim Brotherhood. They also like to flirt with Wahhabism, Al-Qaeda, and other terrorist organizations that operate in the vicinity, which the Saudis have had more of a interesting relationship with over the years. Is that the glue between Riyadh and Ankara, which are clearly rivals? Does the sympathies do the sympathies in Qatar, Doha, towards Wahhabism connect that relation to the Saudis?
Yes, to some extent. I think that for the Saudis, the important thing is to make sure that the new rising forces in the Middle East are not going to challenge them and not going to threaten them. And they understand that as Iran gets weaker, Turkey gets stronger. And of course, they follow what's happening in Syria. They see Turkey building special relations with the United States, Turkey having a role in the Palestinian context. They see that and they want to make sure that this is not going to threaten their interests. And Qatar is a story by itself. Qatar, from Saudi point of view, has many more aspects of how you define your policy towards Qatar. We know about the rift that characterized the relationships until recently. Now there's a new rift that characterizes the relationship with the Gulf countries. The tension with the United Arab Emirates is more important. Their initiative in Yemen is more important. They have to make sure that Yemen is on their side. They have to make sure that the Emirates do not interfere. It's a very challenging time for the Saudis, and this specific time they need less Israel and the Abraham Accords, and they are more interested in shaping the relationship with the other countries playing in this power balance in the Middle East.
Well, the fact of the matter is the United States has already granted the Saudis the status of a major non-NATO ally. They have provided them with quite the significant quantities of types of military systems.
And in return, they got $1 trillion promise to invest in
a pledge, right?
A pledge.
But what do we say about pledges?
We don't believe in pledges, but Trump, I think, knows how to make sure that the pledge translates into reality.
I hope so. Because if they don't follow through on those pledges, there are going to be severe consequences, also economically speaking, but also other type of geostrategic consequences.
Yeah, I think they're going to come good under.
Okay, that's a good appreciated optimism, if I may call it that. The complexities in the Gulf are understood. Naturally, a weakened Islamic Republic of Iran is something that all those Sunni Muslim countries are very keen on. But they don't seem very or overtly keen on seeing regime change in Iran, since that would redefine the manner in which the geostrategic landscape in the Middle East, and not just the Middle East, around the world, the ramifications of the fall of the Ayatollah regime would benefit only the West.
Yes, I think that all the Sunni countries in the Middle East are worried about the potential of change in the regime change in Iran. And they are worried that the weakening of Iran is going to play in the hands of Israel
and the
United States more than anybody else.
Right.
Even Turkey would be a benefactor of something that is more worried about the fact that the major winner is going to be the United States and Israel.
Which is quite interesting, since Turkey is a U.S. ally. And yet, when
not in their hearts. They are not
right.
allies in their hearts. In their hearts, they are competitors with the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to cooperate because of all kinds of reasons that are very obvious, but they are not real friends of the United States. Unlike Israel, and unlike the potential government in Iran if the regime falls.
Historically speaking.
Historically speaking, there can be a regime that is really affiliated with the United States. The Iranian people wish to see a regime in Iran that cooperates with the United States. They want to be close to America. And this is not what you get in Turkey. In Turkey, there's tactical cooperation with America because of all kinds of security considerations and so on and so forth. But it's not coming from the heart. With the Iranian people, if they manage to get rid of this Islamic Republic, it's going to come from the heart. It's going to be real cooperation, and you will be able to see real cooperation between United States, Israel, and Iran. This is an axis that is not to the liking of Turkey and not even to the liking of Saudi Arabia. And that's why they are trying to convince the Americans not to take action against Iran. And of course, they're also worried about the repercussions, the direct repercussions. They're worried that the Iranians are going to launch rockets and missiles in their direction. They are worried about immigration. The Turks are worried about immigration, mass immigration to Turkey and all kinds of things on top of the strategic global.
I'm not sure about that because the mountain peaks and the mountainous regions that border Turkey and Iran today, I mean, you need to be suicidal to try and cross that area.
If you try to cross it as a refugee, nobody's going to shoot at you, I think.
No, not about shooting. The natural barriers to cross that area and the current weather conditions are, quite simply put, impossible.
No, there are some border crossings that you can go through.
Okay.
It's not impossible. Human beings do greater stuff in order to survive. And the Turks are worried about that too. But most of all, they are worried about this potential cooperation between a new Iran with Israel and the United States. This is
interesting.
They can't sleep at night because of that.
Right.
That's why they are trying so hard to convince the Americans not to take action. That's why, by the way, they were a little bit frustrated when the Iranians decided to move the venue of the first round of negotiations from Istanbul or from Turkey to Oman.
Right.
They felt that they were betrayed by the Iranians. But nevertheless, they still are committed to not letting or to trying to convince the Americans not to act.
So, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan provided an exclusive interview to The Economist, or rather the Financial Times, in which he alluded to the fact, according to him, that the United States was willing to forego the demand of zero enrichment in Iran, something that subsequently was refuted by President Trump himself. But next to that, he stated that, you know what, if the United States does not succumb to Iran's demand to not discuss the ballistic missiles, there's going to be a regional war or a war of regional magnitude. Now, obviously, he is lobbying at the Iranian for the sake of the Ayatollah regime in Tehran, but it's clear that they're pushing that narrative of if you go beyond the bounds of the nuclear file, it would essentially mean war. From America's perspective, what happened immediately the day after was the announcement by the Pentagon that they're going to deploy an additional air carrier strike group, namely the USS Ford. And it seems like the Americans are really building a significant force here. It's not just symbolism. It's got substance to it. Within that context, what are we to make out of the strategic objectives right now in this context? Are the Americans looking to broaden the spectrum of just limiting Iran's capacity to enrich uranium and attain ballistic missile capabilities far beyond what international law dictates, which the Iranians are doing regardless? And Rising Lion was a clear illustration of that. Or is it looking to fundamentally change the regime, as we are hopeful for?
Well, originally it was destined to take care of the regime. because this entire buildup of power was motivated and driven by what happened in January when Trump promised that help is on the way. This is the help. It's coming. But as the pressure of killings of masses of Iranians subsided, then the issue became the nuclear issue and the other elements of Iran's power. But I think the Americans understand. If they manage to convince the Iranians to give up on the nuclear file, to give up the 450 kilograms of and other amounts of highly enriched uranium, to send them out of Iran, to accept that they are not going to have the capability to enrich uranium, not only stop enriching uranium, but not have the capability. And I think Prime Minister Netanyahu mentioned that yesterday when he spoke with the Conference of Presidents.
Indefinitely, in contrast to those reports of just 3 years, and then they'll be
dismantling the capability to enrich uranium.
Yep.
And if they are going to give up on the production of ballistic missiles beyond a certain range,
300
kilometers.
Right.
And if they are going to give up on supporting their proxies, this is a death certificate of the Islamic Republic.
Absolutely. It's regime change de facto.
Regime change de facto.
Right.
And, because what is the regime about? The regime is about exporting the revolution. They have a mission. It's not just a mere regime that needs to govern and improve the living conditions of the people under its sovereignty. No, it's something much bigger than that. So if they give up on that, they actually declare that they have given up on the mission of their life. So this is an existential issue for the Iranians. And that's why they refuse to do it. And the United States cannot be satisfied with an agreement that would just say that the Iranians are not going to enrich beyond 3.67% for the next 3 years, as the Iranians say. And there is a big problem here because everybody announces it's not a secret negotiations. Everybody enters the room after it's already announced what is his position.
Right.
So you cannot afford coming out of the room without getting what you said that you are going to fight for. Because this makes the chances of success of these negotiations very low. And so I think these negotiations are doomed to fail. And I'm ready to be surprised, inshallah, but I don't think it's going to happen. And that means that this buildup of power, it's not only meant in order to convince Hamas, to convince Iran to show flexibility, it's also meant to be used.
Mm-hmm. No, there is a credible military threat.
It's definitely very credible, and it's going to be probably used not only as a credible threat, but also as a implementation of the threat on the ground.
If we could put a percentage on things, 80-20 would be...
Well, I don't want to go into percentages, but I think the chances that this armada is going to fire is much greater than the chances we are going to reach an agreement.
Right. Well, just for putting this in context, I think people need to understand that this is it's not necessarily consensus, but the majority of people in Washington, in Jerusalem, in Germany, and elsewhere actually believe that. And it's not just a limited perspective. The only places where they claim it's not going to happen are the countries which have an interest that it won't happen, which is naturally Turkey, Qatar, and other locations.
Everybody's assessment reflects the wishes, the wishful thinking, and not necessarily the assessment or the real assessment. Right. I believe that I'm not affected by my wishes, but by clear analysis.
It is clear. It's clear analysis. It's I have the same analysis as you do on this, and when talking about...
And by the way, if it materializes, then regime change and changing the world order come into the game, because if the axis made of Russia, China, and Iran loses Iran, the repercussions are going to be immense.
I don't tend to do this, but a very senior American official, and I'm saying very senior, has relayed to me that the world is going to look very differently once something like this is going to take
He's
place.
right.
And I really think this is shared, this opinion in Jerusalem here. I know that this is shared. But ultimately, when we're talking here about specifics, let's talk geostrategy for one moment. Do we have time for that? Unfortunately, we don't. But in 1.5 sentences, 2 sentences, what impact does it have from a Russia-China perspective?
Well, first of all, I want to say that we don't know how to turn this military pressure on Iran into a regime change. It's not clear how you translate it. Much depends on the Iranian people.
Yep,
And,
absolutely.
we don't know whether they're going to go to the streets or not. If they do, there's a chance that there's going to be a regime change, but we don't know.
History indicates that they will. We'll have to wait and see whether it's
Exactly.
true or not. But it
Coming back to
relies
the
on
question of
Iranians.
well, what does it mean? It means that the Middle East is going to be dominated by pragmatic forces that major
Loyal
weakening
to the West.
oil to the West, more problems for China to get their oil because they rely very much on the Iranians and on Venezuela. And the oil picture has changed dramatically. And but more than that, it's the momentum. President Trump managed to build up some sort of a momentum that makes America great again. And this challenges the structures that are used by the Chinese and by the Russians in order to maintain their impact on the way the world order behaves, and put them in a very weak position. They are very worried about that. They don't do anything about it, but they worry.
General Kuperwasser, unfortunately, this is all the time that we have for today. I thank you for all of your insights today.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
And I'd like to thank you at home as well, wishing you a good week. And until our next edition, from here in Jerusalem, Shalom.
Jerusalem Studio, now available on Spotify.
TV7 Israel invites you to watch and hear some of the most knowledgeable experts, most of whom partook in creating policies shaping this region today. Join us for Jerusalem Studio.